What is up? I'm Marcel and welcome back to the Modern Filmmaker. In this Davinci Resolve tutorial, we're going over how to create the Bleach Bypass look. And this is a very popular Hollywood look used in a lot of action movies, a lot of thrillers. You can see it in movies like 300, Seven, Taken, John Wick, The Watchmen. The list goes on and on how popular this individual punchy, gritty, hardcore look is. And as we go about creating this look, you'll definitely recognize it from a lot of movies you've seen before. And the techniques we'll be using today, I actually use for a ton of different things, but today we'll just get started with the Bleach Bypass look. So make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. So the cool thing about the techniques I'll be showing you today is no matter what kind of footage from what kind of camera you're using, you can use these techniques and still get the Bleach Bypass look. So I'm going to start with this Blackmagic raw footage, which is actually done in really nice lighting, and show you the techniques. And then I'm going to come to the short film footage that is from several years ago. I think it was shot on a C100 or something like that, maybe C200. And this has a baked-in look. This is just 1080 footage with a baked-in Rec. 709 look. And then this was a buddy of mine shot me on a Blackmagic 6K in a hotel room with no external lighting, just the lighting that was in the room. And you can see it's just, you know, dull, really warm hotel lighting. And we'll be able to pull this Bleach Bypass look off on all these clips really easily. So if we start with this Blackmagic raw footage, and you'll follow the same raw techniques, whether it's raw from Canon or raw from Red or Ari or whatever it may be. I'm just going to kind of show you my workflow with the Blackmagic raw, but you can apply this to any kind of raw footage. So if I jump over to the color tab and just go ahead and pick my hero frame, I'm going to get this stuff out of the way. I'll close these clips down. And then here we have our footage. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a couple more nodes with Alt-S, Alt-S, and then I'm actually going to apply a LUT, just the standard Blackmagic raw LUT. So if you're using Ari or Canon or Red, you could just use the standard LUT as well, or whatever LUT you want to provide the kind of look that you're going for, because we'll actually be doing the Bleach Bypass before the LUT. So if I right click and then come down to LUTs, and then I'll go to Blackmagic Design, this is actually Blackmagic Gen 5 film, and I want to convert it to extended video, which will still be Rec. 709. And here we have a pretty punchy image. If I look at the scopes here, we're pretty much taking up that whole range of dynamic range, almost from 0 all the way up to the top. So if we go ahead and go to our node before the LUT, I'm going to show you kind of the least destructive way you can do a Bleach Bypass. Least destructive meaning it'll push your footage the least. The more advanced technique I'm going to show you next pushes the footage quite far, and if you're not dealing with high bit depth footage or high bitrate footage, then your footage might fall apart. But this technique is actually the least invasive and the least destructive for your footage. So if you come over to the primaries bars in your primaries color wheels tab and go to the gain, all you need to do is simply turn down some of the color information. So if we start with, this is your luminance information, the white is just simply your luminance information. If I push this up and down, it's going to brighten or darken the scene. And then the rest of these are the red luminance, green luminance, blue luminance. So they'll do exactly what you think. If I turn down the red, it'll take red out. If I turn down the green, it'll take the green out. So if I just start over, one thing I'm going to do is just turn down the red, green, and blue. So if I click on this 1.0 and just go to 0.70, go to 0.7 or 0.7D, it'll do the same thing. And then do that for the red, the green, and the blue. Boom. And if I deactivate that, we already have our Bleach Bypass look. So that is really cool, and that's the simplest and easiest way to do a Bleach Bypass look. If you're just looking to kind of get that desaturated look, but you want to keep your contrast, because obviously contrast usually will raise the saturation. The more contrast you add, the more punchy and vibrant the saturation gets. So this is kind of one way that you could keep your contrast while kind of dictating how much color you kind of have. And if I just reset this, right click reset, and let's say I turn down the saturation, it's not quite giving us the same Bleach Bypass look. So for me personally, I love to use the gain when doing this Bleach Bypass look, because you can ensure that you're still keeping all your information, and and you're just kind of getting that dullness out of the Bleach Bypass. Great technique, use it all the time. And let's go with our second more advanced technique to create Bleach Bypass, which you guys have seen me use this technique a ton. And first of all, if I go into our very first node and then come over to the curves, I'm actually going to raise the bottom end significantly. And then I'm going to lower the high end a little bit as well. Kind of flattening my image, just giving me a little bit more push, or a little bit more room in the scopes, because this technique actually adds more contrast as well. And it does a couple other things that are pretty awesome. And then if we click on our next node and then hit Alt-S to make one more node, and then hit Alt-L to make a layer mixer. Now in a layer mixer, I've explained this before, but our bottom node is what dictates the look. So with our bottom node selected, if we come over to our RGB mixer and then hit monochrome, you'll see that now our whole image is monochrome. And now we have no color at all, no saturation in our image. But two cool things are happening. In the top node, we still have our color information. And now the top node is what dictates our color. And now the bottom node is kind of what's keeping our contrast and our clarity. Now, if we right click on the layer mixer node here, and then come down to composite mode, there are a few different things we can use to make our final result. And it kind of depends on the look that you're going for. The first one is hard light. Hard light will give us a very, very extreme bleach bypass look. And here we can come into our first node if we wanted, and we could raise our curves, the bottom of our curves, to kind of get more light in here. And you can see that we're really pushing this thing. Now, if we deactivate everything before the LUT, you can see the drastic difference we're getting here. And it's actually giving us a really cool kind of film-esque contrast that I love. If I full screen this, I love that. Instantly, it looks more film-esque. And our last technique definitely made it look a little bit more film-esque, but this kind of contrast and this little fade that we kind of get from raising our bottom end is a really, really film-esque kind of look. Now, you can come over here if you want something less drastic. Let's say I move this back down a little bit and come back to our layer mixer, right-click, come down to composite. Another way you can do this is with overlay, and this gives you a slightly less drastic look. If I come back up to hard light, you can see it's super drastic. If I come down to overlay, it's a little less drastic, but still super drastic. And of course, we can come down here to our curves on our first node, and we can raise our bottom in that way, or we could keep that down as long as we're happy with what we're seeing in the scopes, and come over to our shadows, and we can actually raise our luminance that way. Now, that's going to kind of add a little bit more contrast to the middle of the image, giving us almost like a mid-tone detail kind of crush, which you'll want to be careful of. In some situations, it could be better to use the shadows. In this situation, I would actually use the curves and maybe even make a dot towards the bottom and then raise the shadows that way. You see, we're keeping our softness, whereas before, when we raised our shadows, it was giving us a lot of weird sharpness and contrast in this middle face section in the midtones, which I'm really not into. So again, if we raise kind of the bottom, we keep our softness, and we can push our shadows down a little bit more like this to really control our contrast. And I like that. In a situation like this, what I would actually do is come to the end and make a node after the LUT. And let's say we flatten this back out, kind of how we had it here, raising it up, but now our blacks are too high. I would come to this node at the end and actually make a dot. Let's say we dictate where we want to lower. So if I make a node right here, I don't want that to get any brighter, any darker. And then I can come down to the curves and slide this bottom point towards the one we just made and really make our shot really punchy. Getting it to the bottom of the scopes, we're happy. And then just that last node, if I deactivate just that last one, hold on, let's see here. That's a pretty big difference. And if I deactivate everything, that's pretty crazy. And then if I select everything but the LUT, we're creating a really, really cool look. Now, we could put a little bit more saturation in this look with this node that we left before our layer mixer nodes. If we come in here and add a little bit more saturation, you can get some of that saturation back without going overboard. Like it was about right here, it felt like before. Or you could add back more saturation and keep that cool contrast, because check this out. If I deactivate everything but the LUT now with our saturation back, you're still getting a way different kind of contrast. And you're even seeing a lot of these colors cleaned up here. You see how it's kind of going, hopefully you can see this through the YouTube compression, but it's kind of going from a nice skin tone here to like blotchy reds in the nose, blotchy reds in the cheeks, some blotchy reds here in the ears that just look really unsightly and look kind of noisy, like they're falling apart. We activate our node structure. That's beautiful. It's cleaned up the skin. It's really cleaned up the whole image, giving us a much more film-esque look and a definitely more Bleach Bypass look, which I love. And so one last way we can do this, if we want to be the least destructive in this situation, we can reset these contrast at the end and reset our color saturation. And then here with our same kind of curved nodes down here, if we right click on our color mixer or our mixer node, layer mixer, and then come down to composite, if we come down to soft light, and this is one of my favorites, if you're just kind of looking to enhance an image but not go full bore, like the other ones are really, really extreme, or can be in some situations. This is, of course, an action situation, so it really makes a lot of sense in this situation to do it, but in a lot of other situations, those more extreme techniques may not make sense. So I'm liking this look. Let me come back down here and go to soft light, and then I'll come down, and you can kind of control our curves in the first node, giving us a really nice look. And it's still pretty saturated. This one's the least destructive, like I said. If I deactivate these nodes, you can see that just switched it a little bit, which is cool. I love that. Of course, we can come down to this last node, and we can make any final adjustments we want here. I like where this is luminance-wise, or maybe I like where his cheek is about here. And then I can even make a point here if I wanted to crush further down, bringing back a little bit more contrast and a little bit more saturation by default. If I deactivate that node, that's nice. And we're still getting our clean skin. We're still kind of getting rid of those splotchy, random red peaks that we were getting before with this soft light variation, composite mode. Love that. I hope that made sense. I hope you guys are sticking with me. So those are 4 different ways that you can make a Bleach Bypass look. And one thing I can do is come over and right-click and grab a still. To grab that still over here, you can see I've already grabbed some stills here of this look. And if you wanted to, you could click this little pull-out menu, go down to Power Grade, and then copy, grab still. And this will be available in your other projects as well. So again, if I come down here to this old footage from, I think this is like 6 or 7-year-old 1080p footage with a baked-in look here. Now the lighting's nice, but this is a baked-in look. And if I come over to the color tab and we start working on this, I can make a node. Let's say I raise the shadows. The highlights are already pretty far down, so I'm actually not going to push these down. And then make 2 more nodes, and then hit Alt-L to make a layer mixer. With the bottom node, I will go ahead and desaturate. And then right-click on our layer mixer, composite mode. Let's check out the 3 different types. If I go to hard light, that's pretty nice. That's a pretty sick look. That almost has like a nice dodge and burn to it as well. But it's a little too extreme for my liking. Come down here to overlay. That looks pretty good, but it's a little more saturated than I like. And if I come down to soft light, now that one is, soft light's usually my choice. I don't like to affect the image too crazy. Soft light usually gives me enough, especially when we're already dealing with a baked-in look, because we can't push this footage too far. This is 1080p footage, for God's sakes. And I'm not sure, I think the bitrate might be 8-bit. Hate to say it, and for you purists out there that are like, oh, you shouldn't push 8-bit footage anywhere near this far. I'm sorry. I do. It's 2022. We're going for hardcore looks. If y'all see Netflix does it too. Hardcore looks all over the place. So I'm liking this. One thing I will do is probably come into this contrast node and bump up our low end a little bit more, just slightly. And I might even pull down some of these highlights to give us back that dim room kind of look. And then I'll come over to our color information. You can see if I click the highlight button, you can see in our top node we have our color information, bottom node we have our contrast information. In this color information, I'm not really happy with how some of these shines on his skin and whatnot. Because the look's baked in, because it's old footage, there's a lot of reasons this is happening right now. So I'm going to come to the mid-tone details of our top color information in our layer mixer and just minus this a little bit to soften it up. And not too much, but we're going to go quite a bit here. If I deactivate, activate, we're going quite a bit. And then I can come over to, Alt-S, I can make a new node after all that, and we can kind of work with the contrast here. If I hit where I'm happy with, let's say right here, I don't want anything to get darker than right there, then I can pull our curve bottom down a little bit more. Pull our high end up slightly. And then a little tip is to come to our color boost, and we'll move our color boost down just a tad. That looks nice. If I deactivate that node, activate, big screen, that's looking pretty good. And if I deactivate everything, that's awesome. We just took this 1080p footage from 7 years ago from, I think, a C200 and just made it look like 2022, I think, in my opinion. And then lastly, if we come over to this clip of me in this hotel room, hit Alt-S, and then we'll add our LUT because, again, this is just B-raw footage. It's log, it's not in Rec 709. So come down here to Gen 5 Film, to Extended Video, and that looks terrible. First, we will need to white balance. So I'm just going to dirty white balance this by clicking our white balance eyedropper and clicking on this white label of this Dos Equis. I think that's what this was. And then if we Alt-S, I can come to our gain in our primaries bars, and I can do our 0.7, come down 0.7, 0.7, boom, and we've got a nice bleach bypass. Come to make a node after our LUT, and then click where we're happy with the contrast. I don't want to get darker than this, that's for sure. And then we can bring our shadows down to where we like in the scopes to get that punchy back. Now, another thing you can do to get that punch, if you want more of that film fade, see how it has that film fade, but you want it to be a little more punchy, a little bit further down the scope spectrum, make a dot slightly before where you made your shadow one, and then you can move this one down. Down a little bit, and then you can actually move this bottom one up. Then move this one down. Not really liking what it's doing with the midtones, but that's another technique as well you can use. I was happier personally with when we did it this way. That looks nice. And of course, if we wanted to take away more saturation, we could go down to, you know, 0.5. Really get the bleach bypass in there. And if we wanted to add a little bit more saturation back in. Yeah. And then from there, we could stylize, of course, in our primaries wheels or in the log wheels. Let's throw a little blue in here, a little teal and orange action. Super towards the bottom. Midtones. A little more film-esque. And now we've got a really normal, bland shot, and we've made it a little bit more dramatic. And that's just in hotel lighting. This is not good lighting, and all of a sudden this looks like an interrogation scene. Come on, people. Work with me here. And that was with the non-evasive version. So just think about all the things that you can do with this. Make sure to try this out on different types of footage. And if you guys like this video, definitely make sure to go down there and give this video a like. It would really help the channel out. Of course, leave any comments, questions, or concerns in the comment section down below. And make sure to subscribe if you like videos on Davinci Resolve. I'm always making them. And again, my name is Marcel, and this has been the Modern Filmmaker. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.